Welcome to Blender 2.8 3D software. For those of you who do not use 3D software, it has one crucial difference from 2D software, and that would be that it is in fact three-dimensional. So normally, you look at something and it's 2D. Now, the Z-axis. We're gonna delve in deep. So, okay, so the first thing to point out, I will draw your attention over here to this little dongle thingy. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but we have our x-axis, we have our y-axis, and now, brand new for the first time ever, the z-axis. And I will interchange Z and Z, so just bear with me. It's my way. But so basically, the core of 3D art is just remembering and using these dimensions to your advantage. So if I want to move something, I can move it in the x-axis, I can move it in the y-axis, and I can move it in the z-axis. Additionally, I can rotate it around the x-axis. And you can see there's a little pink line that appears here, and that reminds me where my x-axis is. I can rotate it on the y-axis, and I can rotate it on the z-axis as well. So, yes. An important thing to remember also is this point right here in the middle. This is our origin. This is 0, 0, 0, as your 7th grade math teacher would call it. And that is a very important point, because this is the center of the universe, and if I build my model way over here, and its center is like over here, and I try and bring this into Unity, it's gonna look ridiculous. It's gonna be all over the gosh darn place. So you wanna make sure that your center here is matched up to the center here. And the way we have this working in Blender is we have this little cursor, right? And I have it set up such that my right mouse button is my selector button, and my left mouse button is my cursor mover button. This is just because I was trained in Blender. A lot of other 3D softwares have it reversed. I like it this way, so I'm going to refer to it this way because that's what I want to do. And I'm teaching the course, so you guys just get to accept it. So if you ever find your cursor and you accidentally left click when you're supposed to right click, or right click when you're supposed to left click, just press Shift C, and I will write all these down, and I will send them to you, and I will post them on Twitter after this is all done, a bunch of fun Blender hotkeys, and that will return your cursor back to the origin point. And then from there, you can take your objects, and let's see, can I move them through here, or do I have to use... Sorry, I'm still a little bit new with 2.8. I want to take my selection to my cursor. There we go. Yeah. So that's Shift S. So Shift C to bring it home, Shift S to center it. And that little yellow dot right there is the center of this cube. And as you can see, it is perfectly overlapped with the center of the universe. And so now our cube is ready to be made into a cat. Okay, so that is step 1. Step 2 is... So we've done moving, done rotating, and now there's also scaling. These can all be accessed over here, but just for reference, the hotkeys of these, which I will be using, are G is move, R is rotate, S is scale, or G is grab, I guess. I don't know. I would have preferred another way. Other software has different ones. These are the ones in Blender, and obviously Control Z is undo, as it usually is. So that is how you move, rotate, and scale an object as a whole. But what is an interesting facet of this is you can not only move it as a whole object, you can actually go into it. So we were in object mode, we're going to go into edit mode, and I'll tab between these a lot. And now, as you can see, it's been broken down into these little points. So now we have access to the actual fundamental parts of the 3D structure. So I can grab the points, and I can do that. I can grab an edge. These little buttons up here are super powerful. So there's the points, edge, and faces. And I could do this, and I could do that, and I could make this one big or small. And so now I'm really getting into the meat of 3D modeling. This is a horrendous abomination, but you get the idea. And then you have, like, you know, you can say face, scale, 0. And so now you have this teeny tiny little face. Actually, interesting. Actually, I can't get out of that. But I can make it very small. I was trying to multiply by 0, which was in fact still 0. And that's why it wasn't growing. I could say, and what's an interesting thing is I could say S for scale, and I could say I want to only move it in the x-axis, and 0. And boom, look at that. Now in the x-axis, which is this red line here, it's actually 0. I could rotate this however I wanted, and I could say, you know what, I want it to be in the z-axis, which is up top, SZ, 0. And look at that, flattened out that way. So I could take the whole thing, or I could just take this one here, say G for grab, Y, 1. And it moved it 1 in the y-axis. And so that's how you can manipulate things very finely, is by taking, like let's say you want to flatten out these, just SZ0, SZ0, SX0, SX0, and now you actually have a lot more reasonable SY0, SY0, and look at that, we're back to actually having a cube. Through the power of mathematics, we have saved ourselves from certain annihilation. So that is the basic premise of object mode, is you grab something as a whole, and you can see your objects over here. So I could make like another thing, I could make like a monkey, which is for some reason one of the base objects in Unity. I could start moving objects as individual things. I could give him, like, I don't know, like some hips. I could, you know, SZ. There we go. And I could totally, with perfect utility, make an entire model out of primitive shapes and just stack them like this, right? And I want to make sure you guys can still hear me, because it's been a bit quiet in the chat for a little while. I want to make sure everybody's still on board. I'm just going to assume yes, hopefully. Please let this have worked. If it doesn't work, okay, cool. I just want to double check, because that's like my nightmare. Okay, cool. So you can, with perfect utility, work in the object stream like this, and that's fine. What I like a lot better, personally, is to work within the object itself. So in edit mode, you can actually, so we're in the cube, let's call this object. And I could say, all right, let's bring this back here. And, ooh, actually you'll note that I've actually moved our origin in all my shenanigans. So I need to go and I need to shift S, selection to cursor. And now it's actually, steady. And, oh, I almost forgot. How am I actually moving around? So on your mouse, holding down, yeah, a monkey, what do you mean? A monkey. Your monkey threw my train of thought off. Darn your monkey. Okay, so how do you move around? On your mouse. You're gonna need a mouse with 3 buttons. Left mouse button, right mouse button, and scroll or middle mouse button. If you don't have 3 buttons, I'm sorry. You're gonna have a very bad time. So what the middle mouse button does, you can scroll in and out like this, and I'll write all this down, so don't worry. And this is also all being recorded. If you hold it down and just sort of move it back and forth, like your whole mouse, you're just like swaying your hand back and forth with the middle mouse button held down, it will rotate around whatever you're focused on. So I could actually focus on this point by pressing dot on the number pad. You're also going to need a number pad, by the way. My apologies if you don't have a number pad. And so now you can rotate around whatever is, so dot. Now the whole thing is selected as the center of the viewport, and holding down the middle mouse button allows you to rotate around it, zoom in and out, rotate, And then the final one is holding shift and the middle mouse button lets you pan the camera around. Right? So that is the basics of moving around, is zooming, rotating, and panning. And this will all be written down, so do not worry. Right, so what have we learned so far? So we've learned difference between object mode, where all of your objects are here, edit mode, where all your objects are in here. So I could actually have, I've just created another cube, but they're actually both inside of object, right? And that's how I like to work, is within one object. So that's the difference between that. So I could have another cube over here, and these two are two separate objects, but in this object there are two cubes. So if that makes any sense to you, that's great. If it doesn't, don't worry about it. You'll get there. We've learned how to move around. We've learned that G is grab. We've learned that R is rotate. We've learned that S is scale. Nice, 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 nice. And we've also learned that you can compound them by saying GX moves it only along the x-axis. Here's our x-axis right here. GY. You could even be more specific, say GY3, and that moves it a lot further along the y-axis. And the positive direction is denoted by where this is going, or this one also works here. You can also emulate the run mouse in preferences. Oh, really? You can? Oh, well, thank you very much. I've learned a thing today. Yeah, that's exactly what I didn't want to do. There we go. Yeah, so, and bear in mind, like, I don't know everything there is to know about Blender. I really don't. But, and I'd love to learn from you guys as well today. Let me see. Oop, there we go. Yeah, everything I kind of know I've picked up along the way. I was originally just self-taught, and then I got hired at Tangent Animation, and I worked there for about 1.5 years. And then I got into video games, and now I work for a company in San Francisco called Gallium. And so all of this time, I've never had like a formal education with Blender. It's just, I kind of do what works for me, and every once in a while someone tells me that I'm wrong, and then I just learn something better, and then that cycle just repeats. So if anybody has like a much better way of doing something, let me know, because I'm always open to that. But what are you guys are here to learn how to make a cat. So let's make a cat. So Shift C, let's return it to the middle. And ooh, last thing I wanted to say is your viewport controls. 1 gets you front view, 3 gets you side view, and 7 gets you top view. And I'll be using those a lot during the course of this lecture, so just stay tuned for that. So first things first, let's get some reference material. So let's go up here. We can either click over here or press Shift A to, which is the same thing as add. And we're going to add an image. We're going to add a reference. Make sure I'm in the front view with 1 on the number pad. Our reference image. And I've prepared my reference image, animal bootleg. I think it's in here. Where did I put it? I think this is the one I want. There he is. Okay, so what I've done in advance, and I always do this when I when I make a character, is I will get a reference of them, or I will draw a reference, and then I will draw them from the perfect front view and the perfect side view, just like this. I also use Shift X, Y, or Z to include X's. Yes, that I am aware of, and I will get to that at some point. It seemed like a little bit more of an advanced move, so I wasn't gonna say it off the top, but you are absolutely correct. And now let's see. This is our properties tab over here. So this is our scene collection tab. This is our properties scene collection panel, properties panel, and among the properties we have the image, which is given to us because we have selected, in fact, an image. This is the front reference, and we can do stuff like take the opacity way down, because we don't need to see it that well. And let's make sure that he's actually like lined up. So it appears that when I was making this, I didn't line him up perfectly, and that's okay. We can just kind of assume some things. So that's the front reference, and I'm gonna change the location. So I'm gonna move this origin now. Oop. I wanted to apply the origin. I didn't want to move him. I didn't want to move him. No. Okay, apparently I can't do that. So we're just gonna duplicate it. Shift D. and we're going to rotate it 90 degrees. Is there a place where we can have the photo reference? Absolutely. Yeah, you can have this for sure. Where do we get the reference to follow along? Don't follow along while I'm doing this. I know you'll be tempted to, but you want to watch it for the first time just fresh, because otherwise you will miss something. I've been teaching high schoolers this for the last couple of weeks, and inevitably one of them tries to follow along live, and it doesn't work, because then we end up being like, oh, wait, what was this one very small crucial point that you made, and then the whole thing gets derailed. So just I will absolutely have this reference on my Twitter at Flighty Felon. So I think it's actually there now, but don't go there. Just watch the screen. Just watch the screen. This will be side reference. Yeah, and then we're gonna rotate it 90 degrees. So R Z 90, enter, and that puts us 90 degrees in the Z axis. So now what we want to do from the side, we're already pretty much there. This is the perfect side view. There we go. So this is the front. This is, oh, I see what I did here. Haha. There we go. So now this is what it looks like. So from the front view, the perfect front view, we see this guy. From the side view, we see this guy. See what I did there? Okay. So now we have these two things, and it looks a little confusing. What you might find is that you might be in perspective mode. And so if you press 5 on the numpad, it actually takes you out of, into perspective mode, or out of orthographic mode. And now when you try and look at it from the side, you're like, oh, this doesn't quite work. Something's off here. And the reason why is because the camera is trying to interpret things closer to it as bigger than things behind. If you want to turn off that functionality and just exist in perfect computer space, press 5 on the number pad. And now you're in perfect orthographic mode. And that is all good. Okay. So let's start with this cat. I'm going to create, let's start with a cylinder. I like to start with a cylinder sometimes. We'll start with his body, and then we'll work our way up. I think 16 verts is a good amount. So I've created a cylinder, and I've set its vertices, which is the number of, like sides, basically, right? To 16, just as a nice even number. And now we're going to go into edit mode right away. So we're going to tab into edit mode, and right off the hop, Blender likes to put these ends on the cylinders that I can't stand, because they are, anytime you have a face that has more than 4 points, it's called an n-gon, and I don't like them, and nobody likes them, and they're bad, and so I like to destroy them right away. And so let's make it a little smaller, and let's move it up, G, Z, and just drag up, and then click to let it go. And what I can do to make this a little easier on myself is I can press Z, and that opens up this little shading menu here, and I can go to wireframe. So now I can see through the cylinder, as you can see. Okay, so I'm in face mode right now, so I can grab individual faces. I'm going to grab the edge select, and what I could do is I could go and I could grab each of these individually and slowly and tediously, or I could press Alt and then select the edge loop. See, so that is much easier. And an edge loop is, I believe, governed by the angle between adjacent edges. I'm not 100% sure of the math there, but usually you can intuit what it is you're grabbing. So I'm going to grab the top one, back to front view with 1, and we're going to bring it in with S. There we go. And I'm going to now take this edge loop here, and I'm going to do something called extruding. E for extrude, Z, and I'm just going to pull it up, and I'm going to scale it in. And so now, let me turn on solid mode. Now this is what it looks like. So I've taken this cylinder and I've started pulling it up. So let's go back up. It's still a little bit big. There we go. And E, and there we go. Nice. Okay. And let's go back into wireframe mode. And let's bring this into his middle. There we go. And we will go back and we'll make him more round afterwards. So let's E-Z, roll down, scale, E-Z, roll down, scale, E-Z, Z. And then I'm going to actually merge at the bottom with Alt-M for merge, and then at center. Nice. So now we have, I'm going to save actually because I'm being smart. Raymond. Yeah, always save. Always, 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 always save. Let's go back to the front. Wireframe. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add loop cuts, which are, I believe, over here. I like to do it through here directly. So Control R, and then you can kind of like hover over and see where it's going to put the cut. We're going to put it right here. Click. And now with one click, you can slide it. If you want to just select it where it is, press the right mouse button, and it grabs it right to the middle. Otherwise, if I do that and I click and then I click, it leaves it where it is. But with the right mouse button, it kind of snaps it to where it was supposed to be, in the middle. And I'm going to scale that. And I'm going to grab this with Alt Select. Actually bring that in a bit. I made it a bit too big off the hop. Control R, S, Control R, S, Control R, S. And so now we have the beginnings of a cat. But it looks good in the front view, but it doesn't look good in the side view, right? So now what we're going to do is we're going to grab them individually in, here we go, in the side view and orient them only in the side view. So I'm going to press G, Y, because the Y-axis is this way, right over there. So by moving G, Y, it lets me do this. S, Y, scales it only in the Y-axis. G, Y, S, Y, and then S, Y, S, Y, G, Y. And there used to be a function in Blender called Screencast where it would actually show you, and apparently it still exists. I am just incapable of finding it in preferences. Absolutely incapable. So I'm sorry, I have to tell you what I'm pressing every single time. S, Y, and S, Y. There we go. Maybe a bit bigger. There we go. Nice. Okay, so now we have this little bean shape, which is fun. And we can see it a little bit more clearly if we turn those off for now. Nice. Okay. Animal Crossing is just little beans. Yeah, that looks good. Might be a little bit round in the middle. There we go. Bring him in a bit. Okay, so that is his body. So now we're going to do his face. And I've been looking at Animal Crossing for the last day and a half because I finally got it in the mail. And their faces are actually not modeled in. They're just kind of textured on top. So that's what we're going to do. So we're going to deselect everything. So select all is A, and deselect all is Alt A. A, Alt A, Alt A. And we're going to save, and we're going to make sure our cursor is right down at the center with Shift C. Nice, nice, nice. And we're going to make, with Shift A UV sphere. So a UV sphere looks like this. It's got rings, and it's got sort of latitude and longitude. It's like a globe, basically. So I'm going to change it to, actually, you know what? We're not hitting up against any polygon budgets here, so let's just keep it as is. It's fine. And just bring it up with GZ. Nice. Nice. Okay. So that's what it looks like. It's actually pretty close from the back. I'm going to fit it to the back because it's already super duper close back there. And the only thing that's not close is the bottom. So I want to adjust the head without adjusting the body. But if I try to, what I want to do is I want to use this thing called proportional editing. So I pressed O, or you can tap up here. And I will grab a piece of it, and let's press G. And everything within that circle kind of gets like mooshed with it, right? You see what I'm doing here? It's taking kind of like a fall off approach with moving stuff. But I don't want that. I don't want it to move the body. I just want it to move the head. So I'm going to Alt A to deselect that little spot. And I'm going to hover over the body, and to select an entire piece of a mesh, you just press L. So what this does is it selects, there's a couple of ways you can select. This is the easiest way, I think, is just to hover over anything that is not connected to another piece and just press L. If this piece was connected to this piece, let's go into solid mode, and let's say, for example, let's go and get points. This point and this point were Alt-M merged. Now, what's the difference between the UV sphere and the regular sphere? Oh, the icosphere, it looks kind of like this. It's just, it's not got as, the edge loops are different, and they're not what I want for this one. Other than that, they're pretty much the same. So now when I see that because they're merged, when I press L, they both get connected, or they both get selected. Now it's just the one. And so I press H to hide it, and now it is gone, and I can not have to worry about it anymore for the next little while. So let's go back into wireframe mode. So I want his head to actually kind of like smoosh in on the bottom. So let's go back into proportional editing, and I'm going to press G, Z. There we go. And you can adjust the size of this circle of influence with your scroll wheel. And I'm going to take his front, and I'm going to GY. And I'm going to bring it forward like that. I'm going to bring his forehead back a little bit. There we go. Nice. All right. So now I want to, now this is an interesting thing. Yeah, you're welcome. So this is interesting. So what I want to do is I want to be able to grab his cheeks and pull them out like this. But I want his left side and his right side to be precisely the same, because that's just good for him. Whoa. Thanks, Kai. So what am I going to do about this? How do I make that so? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to unhide everything with Alt-H. So H is hide, Alt-H is unhide. Alt usually undoes whatever the previous key was. And he's actually not quite on center, so I'm going to bring him a little bit on center. There we go. That's pretty close. That should work. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to grab with the box select now. So this is B. I've pressed B, and now I'm going to click and drag. This is another selection tool other than L. And now I've grabbed all of the points, all the vertices on this half of his body, on the left, on his right half. And I'm going to press X, delete vertices. And so now he is hollow, or at least half of a cat, right? So what I can do is I'll go out of edit mode for a second. I'm going to go into modifiers, which is this little wrench over here. Boop. I'm going to add a modifier to him. And the modifier I want is the mirror modifier. Boop. And let me just turn these off to make sure it's actually working properly. Yeah, so it's not quite lined up, which is okay. We're going to set the merge limit to 0.01. And that kind of gives it a bit more of a jump. So now it's kind of welding them, whereas before it was not. So now we have it mirrored. So now when I go in, I'm going to hide this again, and I'm going to turn these back on, and I'm going to save because I'm a smart person. Haha. And now I'm going to press G, and I still have proportional editing on. And I want to make sure, and this is interesting, I want to make sure that I don't get the middle of his head in the radius, because then that happens. So I'm going to make sure it's right outside the circle. And there we go. Nice. And it's going to require some finagling to get the shape just right. There we go. And so for stuff like this, it can often be easier to turn off these and get into or out of into perspective mode. So press 5. So now you can see what you would see in game. So let's just play with it for a second. So yeah, let's move it actually a little bit in. It's a little bit strong. There we go. Nice. I was aware I might have overdone it with the reference. His cheeks were a bit big in the reference. They're a little bit more just like sleek. He doesn't have puffy cheeks. Some villagers do, but this one does not. That seems nice. And let's turn these off. Unhide. Get back into edit mode. There we go. Just a nice rounded essence of cat. Perfect. How did you turn off the soft selection again? Soft selection. Oh, it's O. Like this little guy up here. Or O on the keyboard. Yeah. Perfect. Okay, I'm happy with this. And I'm also going to smooth shade him, just because that gives me a better idea of how he's going to look in the end. He's got like a weird bump on the back of his head. Let's see how I can fix this. It's just not quite the right shape yet. That'll do. It's just a game of pushing and pulling vertices until you're happy. Okay, that'll do. We're on a bit of a time crunch, so that'll have to do. Okay, so that is a head and a body. And back into orthographic mode with 5 and front view with 1. Let's call this Raymond. Because why not? Back into edit mode. So now I want to give him his ears. And in Animal Crossing, the ears are like hilariously triangular. So let's think. So I have a coworker, and he is a very smart guy. And he's worked for like Atari since the 80s, and he worked for EA on The Sims, and he's like an endless fountain of knowledge. And the coolest thing is that he was trained in a time before like computers, right? So he was trained as a 2D artist in art school in like Georgia. And so he has a saying, never let the computer seduce you into doing what it wants you to do. So that is why I always draw out what I want before I make it. Because what you might be tempted to do is say, okay, all right, so Shift C, make sure everything is back to the center, save up. I will make a cube, and I should turn off proportional editing. There we go. A cube, and I'll bring it up like this, and then I'll take the edge, and I'll just bring it up like this, and I'll make it smaller, and then I'll take the bottom of it, and I'll make it bigger. And bada bing, bada boom, what do you know? You've got ears, right? Not quite. Like it works, but it doesn't. See what I mean? Like it's not quite what you want. The computer is trying to convince the easiest way to do things out of cubes, and so the computer's like, it's the easiest way to do things. But that's not. This doesn't work. It's not working. So let's try something else. So let's actually think about the shape of these ears. So if I were to describe the shape of one of these guys' ears, it would kind of be like a cylinder, but the front has just been shorn off like this. So it's like or maybe a cone, but with like a piece at the top, right? So let's start with the base, which will be actually quite round except for the front. So the easiest way I think I want to do this is actually with Alt or Shift A and a circle. And so a circle kind of comes in like that, and I'll give it 16 verts. So you don't need to go over the top. And we're actually going to take the front half of it, and we're going to S, Y, and just drag it in till it's a very slight curve. G, Y, and bring it back. Bring it back now. There we go. So now that actually I think is much closer to the shape of the base of one of Raymond's ears. So let's bring this one to go to the front view. Let me make it smaller. And now we're talking. Now we're cooking with gas. Okay, so look at that. That's a lot closer. So we can SY, make it a bit bigger in the Y-axis. GY, bring it back. And let's make it a lot smaller. Or we're going to actually bring it down inside of his head. Kind of starts around here almost. GX, bring it in. There we go. And let's bring it in until it's actually inside of his head. Nice. Okay, even further. Nice. Okay, so now it's nicely hidden inside of his head. Perfect. Perfectly perfect. So now we're going to actually extrude up, Z to lock it in that axis, and scale it like this. And you'll note that it's actually not quite lined up. That's just because I've made on-the-fly adjustments to the proportions. I've decided that it looks a little bit better this way. So we're going to move it a little bit like this. And then we're going to grab up a little bit. S-E or E-Z to bring it up in that axis. S to scale it in. E-Z up in that axis. Alt-M and merge to center. Okay, and so now how does that look? That is a lot closer. Ooh, follower. Shit, scared the heck out of me. 1 second, let me turn that down. Whee! Thank you, thermal squid. So it's still a little bit shallow at the back of the head, and we can change that real quick. So let us hide the body and the head, and I'm just going to turn on, actually I don't need to turn on proportional editing. I can just grab this and bring it back, and grab these, and bring it back. And you can grab 2 at a time by using the box tool, and bring it back. Nice. Okay, so that is good. And then let's grab the top, box tool, select GY, and then make it a little bit bigger in the y-axis. And up, and then take the whole thing and move it up a little bit. There we go. There we go. So that's a good start. Let's see how this looks in actuality. Interesting, interesting. I went a little bit too big too fast. Let's bring it in. There we go. Nice. So let's create some edge loops here to make it a little bit more organic. And we can start kind of whittling away at it. So let's grab just the ear. You can actually select what you want to hide and press Shift H, and it hides everything else, which is kind of fun. And I'm also going to take the front, and now this is the third way of selecting something, is the C, which is the brush select. And that creates this little like brush here, and you just click or just like drag over everything you want to select, and you can shift select things to add to the selection that you wanted, and then hide. So now I have just the back of the head. And you know what, I'm not sure. I hid too much. I'm gonna keep. And so you can press the middle mouse button to undraw with the, there we go, with the brush select. There we go. So now let's make this a little bit more even. So let's grab some edges, and let's make this feel a lot more like a sphere. There we go. RZ to rotate it only in the Z axis. There we go. There we go. And it's okay that they're overlapping like that. That's fine. And there we go. How does that look? That's a lot better. Okay. And I'm gonna Alt select to grab that edge loop. I'm gonna make it a little bit bigger. Bring it back so that the front is still that nice cutoff. Make it a bit bigger. Bring it back. And Alt H to unhide everything else. Alt A to unselect. Oh, I did that, didn't I? When I made an edge loop here, it did not extend it to there. Interesting, very interesting. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use the knife tool. Okay, all right. Did I delete the head? Just hit it, yeah. Don't worry, the head is still there. So I'm going to use my little knife, which is just K. So you press K, it's the knife. And now I can actually start to cut edges into my mesh. So I can be like, there's one edge, and I'm going to put this cursor back down here so I don't have to look at it. and I block my way, and I can be like, and now connect. And now I've completed the edge loop, so it's going all the way around, which is just good form. And let's take this edge, and let's bring it down until it's hidden nicely. Or I could just be really good about this, and I could actually merge this to a point that already exists, so you don't get that weird cutoff. So I could be like Alt-M, Alt-M at last, Alt-M at last, Alt-M at last, and we could do that all the way around. So like Alt-M at last. Ooh, wrong one, wrong one. There we go, that's a lot better. And now we just take it and we push them back where they were. Yoink. And what did I mess up here? There you are. Make them align up a little bit better. Perfect. Okay. All right. In hindsight, I probably could have found a better way to do these ears, but hindsight is 20/20. See, I let the computer seduce me. I have become my own cautionary tale. I let the computer seduce me into doing what it wanted me to do, which was use the circle. Aha! Look at that. Look at that. Fairy tales. And I'm going to grab this. And I'm going to grab this. And that'll do nicely. Okay. I'm not going to spend any more time on these ears, just because we'll be here all night otherwise. Alright, so let's get the whole thing smooth shaded. Boink. Oh, what happened here? Now this is interesting. So as you can see, something went very, very wrong when I tried to when I tried to shade it. So what the smooth shading actually does is it says each of these points has a normal coming out of it. So a normal is a direction that is straight out from whatever it is. So like if you were to take like a tennis ball or something and pick a point on it, the normal, if it was let's say it was a perfectly smooth rubber ball instead, a perfect rubber ball, and you were to just pick a point on it and it would point directly up, right? From that point, it would kind of like go towards the center of the ball, basically, right? And so that's what smooth shading tries to do, is it tries to find the halfway point between this vertex that is connected to here and basically the same vertex that is just overlapped with this one, essentially, that is connected to all this. And it's not working right now because these ears must be inverted. So I'm going to go to Mesh, Normals, and recalculate outside. And there we go. And so it was trying to actually fold the ears into themselves in terms of the lighting. So that's what was going wrong there. Okay, so we're almost there, and we're almost at our hour. We're probably going to go a little bit over. That's okay. I don't know about you. I have nowhere to go. It's the apocalypse, after all. Let me bring the shoulder in a little bit, just because it was bothering me. There we go. That's better. Okay. So now we're going to make the arms, because why the heck not? And we're going to make sure our cursor's down here happily. Shift A, and let's use a nice cylinder. Boink. 16 is a good number of verts. And G to bring it up, R to rotate it, and S to scale. And once again, I'm going to go and I'm going to remove these n-gons from the end. Doink and doink. X faces. And then I'm going to go to edges, Alt select, that loop there, and I'm just going to bring it in. Let's go to wireframe again. All the way up here to where it kind of like goes into him. Nice. Perfect. And now I'm going to, I'll show you something cool. Okay, I'll finish the arm and then I'll go back for the cuff. So extrude, scale, extrude, scale, extrude, scale, extrude, and merge at center. There we go. So now we have these little arms, right? Which are lovely, just lovely. And I'm gonna move them back a little bit so that they don't come out the sides of him like they are right now, which is just poor form on arms as a whole. Make this a little bit broader just to hide it. There we go. Nice, that will have to do. Okay, So now, but he still wants to have these little cuffs, right? So let's make an edge loop here, and we'll call this part here will be the cuffs. So I'm going to take my faces, and I'm going to Alt select, and that creates an edge loop of faces instead of edges. And what I'm going to do with these selected, I'm going to extrude them and then just leave them there. So I've not moved them. We have an exact duplicate. What the heck? Yeah, it is in fact. Wait, what? No. 1 second. Should have been. So this is what it looks like when it's not a duplicate. All right. And this is what it looks like when it is extruded but left where it is. Okay, that makes sense. And now I'm going to scale it in the direction of the normals. So remember what I just said about the normals, how it's like a point that's going directly out from the surface? Alt, S, and then move it up. It's scaling it in the direction of the normals. And then now I can do unselect, so we have a little cuff started here. And I'm going to actually bring this a little bit up like this, just because it's a bit intense right now. And now I'm going to create another edge loop, R. And what I can actually do when I have this selected, or when I'm hovering like this, I can actually use the scroll wheel to determine the number of edge loops that I want to cut. So I want 2 right here. Say, boink. And then right click to put it in the center and just scale them in like that. Perfecto. Look at that. And we'll put these as smooth shaded as well. And so you can see here, this is what I meant before, how when you smooth shade something, it's kind of trying to like blend between, so this angle and this angle kind of becomes this like washed out sloped area. What I can do is I can add another edge loop here and here, and that will tell the computer that this is, don't drag all of the lighting along with it. We want like a nice, like, so here it's fine. I like this to be a nice kind of vague curve, but here I want it to be very clear in the lighting that this is his hand and this is his sleeve. So that's why I did that there. And adding edge loops here and here will help you accomplish that. And now for his arm, I'm just gonna kind of give it a little bit of an organic shape. Let's see, I'm just gonna drag it back a little bit. People's elbows tend to go back and down a little bit, and same with critters, and I like to put 2 edge loops on either side, just because when I'm bending it later I will want those there, because you'll see. You will see that is for tomorrow. And then let's do some feats while we're still here, and we're still kicking. Another cylinder, 16 is good, and let us grab the top and the bottom, delete those faces, L to grab the whole thing, SZ to extrude upwards like so. And now let's go to the wireframe, get our edges, Alt select to grab the edge loops, and we're gonna go down just like this. And SZ0, SZ0, there we go, to get it nice and flat. And then just like so. And what you can do is E, and then leave it where it is by pressing, just clicking. S, we'll just drag it in there. And what you can do is in Blender, if you search with space and type in grid fill, it gives you this option here, which is called grid fill. And that will automatically fill in the grid. And you can set how many spans you want. So you can have like a more complex fill. Ooh, actually that's interesting. So yeah, it's kind of like, it's got like a more complex in the middle, and then, yeah, least complex on the edge. So I like this one. This one's nice. And that's good. And let's make sure it is in fact shaded smoothly. Let's turn these off so we can see how it looks. Looking good. And let's give it some knees in the side view here. Bring it up in there. And let's actually bring it back here as if it was a real limb with bones in it. And then bottom of the knee, top of the knee. Perfect. And if I was actually making Animal Crossing and I wanted to make sure this was all like super polished, I would probably not have done it this way. I would have, instead of doing, like, because you can see that these are two different shapes, right? What I probably would have done, I'm going to make a duplicate of Raymond, Shift D, duplicate Raymond. So now it's Raymond 0.001. I'm going to make it Raymond 0.007 because that makes me happy. So what I would do here instead is I would get rid of this. And now on the side, let's make a nice little space where the arm is going to be. I'm going to delete these, and I'm going to start pushing and pulling the vertices into the shape of like an arm, essentially, right? There we go. Nice. And now, ooh, that's interesting. SX0 to make it all align on the x-axis, and then rotate it back. There we go. So that's maybe a little bit like so. Okay. And now I can extrude in the x-axis. Woohoo. And then SX0, and then do the exact same thing. But now, as you can see, you don't have that line there. He's got tiny little nub arms now. I kind of like this one. But yes, this is the more complex way of doing it. This is kind of like the starter kit way of doing it. And realistically, that's what went wrong with the ears, is I tried to do it afterwards. I tried to meld them together afterwards. Whereas what would have been smarter would have been just to cut out slices of his head and get those in there. So this is fine. This is cool. I'm happy with this. Let's give him a tail, side reference. And here's an interesting thing. So he only has one tail. We don't want this to get duplicated. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to apply the mirror now. And then I'm going to go into edit mode. And I'm going to unselect everything. Add another cylinder. Remove the top. Remove the bottom. And now, in side mode, I can happily just place it on his bum, like this. Good cat. Good cat friend. And let's extrude. And don't worry, I'll come back for all those missing edge loops. And merge at center. And edge loop here, bring it down. Edge loop here, bring it down. Edge loop here, bring it down. And let's go into wireframe mode. And I want to just correct this a little bit. Brush select those bad boys. There we go. There we go. And it's a little bit high, so there we go. Okay. And smooth to make sure it's all good. And there we have it. We have a lovely cat friend right here. And then last, before we go, I'm just gonna quickly show you. Oh, did it not work? It didn't. One second. I'm gonna move this to the side. And now I'm going to. I thought I could have sworn that. Oh, I must have been on Raymond, the other Raymond. That's interesting. So I don't need both of these tails. See, this is how things get confusing in 3D. And I'm going to bring him right into the middle. Make sure it's right there. There we go. Perfect, because I'm fussy. All right, so we're going to unwrap him real fast. And I'm going to show you what that is. So basically, unwrapping means you're taking... I'm going to get rid of other Raymond, just so we're clear on who's the boss here. We're going to... Right now we have this mesh. And the mesh is made out of 3D points, and what we want is for these 3D points to have a texture on them like this. And so what that means is we need to tell the texture which points go where, right? So when I draw this hair, it needs to know that this is where that's going to be. So a way to do this is we're going to start by cutting seams into Raymond. So I'm going to open up down here the UV editor, which gives us this nice little square here. I'm going to make a new UV grid. I'm going to call it grid. Boom. Now we have a grid. And I'm going to create another section over here. This will be our shader editor, and it will be for this Raymond. And don't worry about this. This is just Blender stuff. This is complicated, but don't worry about it. And I'm going to bring in a texture. It's the texture I just created, which is grid, and I'm going to hook that into the base color. So now, if I look at it in render mode, it actually does have the texture on it, because the shapes in Blender do come with like a base unwrap, especially the basic ones like the UV and the cylinder to some extent. Like these guys have like the base unwrap, but you can see everywhere that I've extruded, it doesn't have, and these guys don't have any, it doesn't have that nice shape. So let's go piece by piece and let's unwrap them. So Shift H to hide everything except for that, and I'm going to grab the edge loops, boink, and they connect in the middle. Control E, mark scene. And so now when I grab all of this, I press U, unwrap, and you can see that it actually split it in half, and I'll put it so it's facing the same way as before. So you can see it's the front and the back, right? So if I want to grab just here, and when you're in face mode, it actually, the seams will, when you press L, block you. So this is just the back, and if I were to grab the back, you can see that it's moving just the back. So that's nice. So that's good. And we want to bring back everything else. Let's do the feet. And we're going to grab you want to kind of want to put your seams where people aren't going to see them. I'm going to grab that and here. There we go. So we have kind of like the pad of the foot at the bottom, and then the inner part of the leg. Put some seams there. I'm going to grab, not you, go away. There we go. I was grabbing all the things, not you. And we're going to put this on the bottom. People aren't going to see it. Going to grab the edge of the cuff, which goes all the way around, I believe. Yes, it does. Edge of the cuff. And edge of the cuff. And then the bottom of the cuff as well. And also the bottom of the hand, just because you'll see. It's all about hiding the seams where people are not gonna see them. And that's how you make something lovely. I would say that perhaps the biggest difference between a professionally textured 3D model and an unprofessionally textured 3D model, I think your face cam is covering up the UV window. Oh, I'm so sorry, that's my bad. Let me remove that. Nope, that's the one I wanted. I want that one. Webcam, border. There we go. That's better. Okay, perfect. Excellent. Thank you very much. So what I was saying was, I think that the biggest difference between a professionally textured or surfaced model is the UV unwrapping, because it's the amount of time spent there and the amount of thought put into it. I should have grabbed these as well separately. It makes all the difference later on when you're actually coloring it, because otherwise things look kind of, that's not what I wanted. I wanted seam, not split, not slide. There we go. Later on when you're actually painting it, how you've set it up makes a humongous difference on the resolution, right? So grab the end, and that will do nicely. And now the head, which actually includes the ears now because they're merged. I'm gonna grab one side of it, actually, what if I do this? That'll work better. So now we're grabbing all the way like this. And unselect these bad boys. And let's get into wireframe mode. Oh, it's kind of hard to even comprehend what's going on in here, but I assure you this is the line we want. You start being able to see it more clearly with time. So that is what we want. And might as well just make sure we got this and this. Alright. Do inset polygons cause any issues for mapping or rigging in Blender? Inset polygons, does that mean when you say inset polygons, I'm trying to figure out what you mean. Like when you like extrude inwards? So like how, I'll do an example of that afterwards to see if that's what you mean. Let me just grab seams here. Let's see how this looks actually, because I'm not 100% sure. Yeah, we got it. Okay, cool. So let me grab everything, and you, and unwrap. And that'll do. And you can spend a lot of time moving things around. This actually looks pretty good to me, and you can double check it by going into render mode and seeing if the stuff all looks good. Yeah, it looks like everything has kind of like the same size of squares. This is okay, that's just a seam, that's fine. But yeah, this looks like it's pretty much good to go. Polygons in the model. So like if I were to, let's say, I'm just gonna hide Raymond for a second. So if I were to create like a cube and I were to take the top face and inset it like this. So if I were to, so it already comes kind of like pre-unwrapped, so I'll give it the same material. And if I were to grab it and inset it like that, and then inset it, is that what you mean? Because yes, that would, you would have to re-unwrap that. You would have to say, okay, this is a good edge loop, this is a good edge loop, and then grab these things, right? And then unwrap that. Why is it not unwrapping? I don't want that. Oh, I see, because I didn't actually set the seams, did I? You'd have to re-unwrap it. And I've messed up somewhere along the line. That would be where. I'm just gonna be not lazy about this. There we go. What am I doing wrong? Now I'm confused. What have I done? Separate ends like the arm before. Okay. Like one object clipping into another. Okay, so if one object is clipping into another, by which you mean like, so with how Raymond's like his ears kind of like go inside of his head like that, or how these arms go inside of here. So that is not a problem as long as so when I unwrapped him, this part here is his sleeve. And that has nothing to do with this part, which is his body, right? I think Mario's Model in 64 does that, so it's probably fine. Yeah. So when you're unwrapping, it's kind of a weird understanding of the model. So it's like, basically, this texture is saying, this spot right here, let's give it like that one right there, that is where on the texture it is reading it from. So if I were to give this, let's say, let's bring in a texture, and bootleg, let's make it, let's make it Raymond. So I've now mapped, unsuccessfully rather, Raymond, and that's actually not a good example because it's not a square image. Let me bring another one. It kind of confuses things. I want dirt, grass. There we go. So now it's got the grass texture on him, right? And it's basically saying this spot here is over here, this spot here is over here, this spot here is over here, this spot here is over here. It doesn't matter if these two are physically intersecting. As far as the texture is concerned, it's fine. If, however, let's say, let's actually go back to Raymond for a second, because that actually might be a better example for this one. Let's say there's So it's already got something occupying the space where his head is, and that I believe is, yeah, that'll do. So you can see that it's got his head is here, right? If I were to take his arm and move it there, they would both be reading the same part of the texture. So any change I make to the texture here would appear both on his arm and his sleeve. I don't want that. Sometimes you might want that if you want to save texture space and only model and only like texture half of the character and then just mirror it. That's a perfectly reasonable thing to do, because what you can do is be like, let's say instead of having this arm, let me put this back over this way. Let's just, for kicks and giggles, delete this, and then take this, duplicate it, and put it here. Now both of these actually occupy the exact same part of the texture map, as you can see. And so anything I paint over here would apply to both arms, if that's what you want. That's not what I personally want. I'm sure it would work fine, but it's just not what I want. So that is it for today. I kind of like the grass better. It was less spooky. There we go. That is it for today. I hope that you guys all learned a little bit about modeling in Blender.